Okay, so hello everyone. It's really great to see everyone here in the audience today. And we at the UQ Biotechnology Society would like to welcome you to this webinar about employment in the biotechnology sector, where we hope you will gain some valuable insights into the skills and traits that biotechnology employers look for in graduates and the types of career opportunities available to you. And my name is April. I'm the partnership officer of the UQ Biotechnology Society, and I'm joined today by my co-host Christelle, which is the secretary of the society. We have a very insightful webinar prepared for you today, where we will be joined by Trevor Neville, owner and the principal at the executive recruitment firm Tranzition Group. Before we get started, I just like to acknowledge the traditional owners. So the UQ Biotechnology Society acknowledges the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands at the University of Queensland. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who will continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. We recognize their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. Okay, so just a few housekeeping rules. This event will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel afterwards. And please mute your video and audio during the presentation, as they will not be muted automatically. And you can unmute yourself to ask questions or discuss during our Q&A session in the final part, and start video if you would like to. You can also just type your questions in the chat if you like. And now I would like to hand over to Christelle to introduce our guest speaker for today. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Just before I introduce Trevor, I wanted to give a brief introduction to the UQ Biotechnology Society and let you guys know who we are and what we do. So we are a 270 member strong association based at UQ, the University of Queensland, and we are comprised of students, industry professionals, and alumni, all of whom are passionate about biotechnology. Our aim is to provide our members with the opportunity to engage with industry leaders in the biotechnology sector through a variety of in-person and online events, and also to connect with each other, to build relationships and network at our various social events. So feel free to contact us via our website or on our social media channels. Just let me change slides. So I also just wanted to run through with you guys today what to expect from today's presentation and the kinds of topics that we'll be covering. So we will be covering everything from understanding the key differences between academia and business, particularly around the cultural differences and the goals of research versus industry. We'll also be talking about the skills and traits that biotech companies look for in graduates. And we want you to be able to use this knowledge to reflect on what you can do throughout your studies, throughout your university time, to prepare yourself and to help make you more attractive and more employable when you come to graduate. And then we'll go on to awareness of the types of jobs that are available. So what kind of career opportunities are available in the biotechnology sector here in Brisbane. So another important thing that I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of before I introduce Trevor and before we get started, and that is around how recruitment companies operate here in Australia. So I understand that depending on different countries around the world, recruitment companies can operate differently. So here in Australia, recruitment companies are paid by the employer for the service that they offer, not the job seeker. So what that means is that that the recruitment company is in the business of finding the very best candidate for the job. They're not in the business really to help you as the job seeker find a job. So what does that mean for you guys? And why is Trevor here to speak to you today, and what kind of value can he provide? Well, really, Trevor, as a recruitment consultant, principal at Tranzition Group, understands what biotechnology companies look for in graduates and look for in potential employees. He sees all the candidates that come through, he screens them, and he knows which candidates make it to the top of the pile and which ones don't. So you guys can use this information to empower yourselves to understand, what the employer is looking for and what kind of skills and traits you might need to develop in order to stand out from the crowd in your job search. Well, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Trevor. Trevor was initially qualified in the medical laboratory sciences, and he was involved in the healthcare and biotechnology sector for more than 40 years in various roles, including laboratory, sales, marketing, operational, and general management of both multinational, Australian, and cell phone companies. These organisations have covered everything from diagnostics, medical devices, nutritional supplements, and medical consumables. Trevor is now involved in recruiting personnel within the biotechnology and healthcare sector with his own organisation, Tranzition Group, and he's been doing this for the past 19 years, primarily in Queensland. Recent positions that he's filled include board members, CEOs, operational managers, sales managers, R&D scientists, to quality assurance roles, regulatory roles, and commercialization roles. He was a committee member of the Queensland Oz Biotech, and also past chair from 2006 to 2009. And he's been involved in mentoring both graduates and early stage organizations. And Trevor has plenty of experience presenting on topics including entrepreneurial skills that are required to transition from research to commercial roles, CV preparation, recruiting innovative and entrepreneurial skill sets to meet organizational needs, networking, personal branding, and alternative career paths. So Trevor, a very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Crystal, and to April for the introduction and for the opportunity to talk to UQ Biotech Society. As Crystal mentioned, it's an area that I'm very passionate about because it's quite simple. People who are watching, if you do it correctly and look at what skills you have, you will stand a far better chance of getting a job in this field. I congratulate you all, as I've said to Crystal and April separately, because you're listening to this. And what's happened? I've just faded somewhere. Where am I? Whoops.
Are you right there, Trevor?
Yeah, no, I've lost everything. Sorry.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Now we're right. Okay. So getting back. So thank you to everyone. And so we'll get straight into it. You're at the pivot point here, and I'll call you people if that's okay. You're in the middle. You're finishing academia, and you're potentially looking for an industry role. So it's important at this stage to understand, okay, this is what I've done, but this is what I need to do. So next slide. So we're going to cover the difference between academic and business and entrepreneur. We put entrepreneur in there because it covers a broader range, and just the cultural difference. So please understand it, because you're in the mindset of what you're doing currently and you need a totally different mindset for where you're going. We'll cover the skills and traits required by business employers, and I'll ask the question, what are your strengths? And if you don't know, and you may not know, that's your homework from tonight. You have to understand what your strengths are and what you need to do. I'll talk briefly about the opportunities in the industry. And so we'll cover initially the academic versus business and entrepreneur. So if we go across, as you can see on the top of this chart, the slide from discovery, development, and commercialization, you can see we start with basic research, applied research. And in essence, that's where most of you are at this stage. You're in that area, whether it's idea generation or you've been given one to do, and then potentially the feasibility, but you're in the basic research, applied research area. Moving down the chain towards a product on the market, there is then the development, verification, and prototype development. So that's stage we're moving into, okay, we've got a product or a service. How optimized is it? Does it actually work? Can we test it? And I generally mean, because it's in human biotechnology, clinical testing. And then as we move down the supply chain or the manufacturing chain, we need to quality control it so we can reproduce it all the time. And also we have to surround it all in the regulatory requirements. And we've seen enough of that with the COVID and AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, the different modalities required in regulatory area. Then we move into the commercialization sector. We need to do a phase 1 trial, phase 2, phase 3, register. Okay, now we've got the initial 100 mil of the product or whatever. Now, how do we scale it up to thousands of mils or whatever it may be? How do we standardize that process, validate it? And then, okay, the last bit, the simple, no, it's not, it's very hard. Where do we sell it to? What's the price? How do we promote it, etc.? So that is the whole gamut of what happens with a product in biotechnology, whether it's a service, a medical device, a drug, they all go through the same process. And as I said, initially, you're probably down the front end around the discovery. But if you start opening your eyes to, okay, this is what will happen when I leave here, these are the other areas that will occur and where could I possibly slot in? So thank you. So just some cultural difference on academic versus entrepreneur. As far as communication, you know, in academia, you spend most of the time looking for fellowships or grants. If not yourself, your immediate supervisor, they spend a lot of time chasing money and money is getting more difficult to get hold of. So the difference, that's your communication. Entrepreneurs are looking, they got to take their product, service, or whatever they think they got and pitch it to investors to find the right, as they call it, the sweet spot. Again, some of the differences, handling rejection. You know, generally it's, in academia, it's about manuscript reviewers. They don't like what you're doing. Please redo your PhD. Give me another version of it. Whereas in in entrepreneurship, and business, it's about talking to clients and establishing the business value. So they need to know, why should I deal with you? Another difference is validating progress and value. And in academia, it's always from your peers. You know, you've got to get the big tick from your supervisors, their supervisors, and hopefully approval that way. Whereas an entrepreneur or a business person, it's all about the stakeholders. Who owns the company, who has money in the company, and who is the end user. Do not forget that it's all about the customer at the end. So another major change is the risk factor. Generally in academia, you have to demonstrate novel research. But in entrepreneurship, it's always about first mover advantage, a disruptor to the industry. Take Uber, take Canva, you know, take Apple versus the other mobiles. Whoever establishes the first market generally holds the market. And we've seen that with AstraZeneca versus Pfizer versus Moderna in the COVID era, who are the major two players at this stage, because they established first mover advantage. Again, another cultural difference is the perseverance and self-doubt. You know, no offense meant, but there is a lot of endless, inconclusive experimental results. Please tell me if it's not, but in most cases it is, because you got to go down a path, up another path to get your way through. Again, you know, entrepreneurs' problems is the endless problem solving against time. They've got to get the product to market, the service to market, and they need to do it quickly. Okay, how do we do this? What do we need to do? Next slide, please. So again, the cultural difference between academia versus business, it's the objectives. In academia, it's always about good science. In business is, okay, where's the money? How can we make some money to make this worthwhile? Confidentiality, and this is a big bone of contention. In academia, it's all about publishing, but in business, it's don't so much publish, but we need to patent what we've got and protect it. And when we've got the patent, then we potentially can publish. But many a case out of the university where they published some very interesting information that they found, but found as a result they couldn't go to market with anything because a company could not patent what they had already put in publications. The audience is different. In academia, it's all about your peers within the university or thereabouts, or in the UQ Biotech Society. But in business there, it's all about the stakeholders. Again, who owns the company, who's got money in it, who is the end user. The focus in academia is all about recognition, and in business it's about, okay, the products. Okay, you got a problem, that's fine. What do we need to do to fix it? How long will it take and how much will it cost? So totally different mindset. The last one is questions. You know, in academia, you're prompted to say, why do we do it? You know, how can we do this? Whereas business is, how much does it cost? Is it feasible? Can we do it? Thank you. So again, and I want to stress now, that gives you an overview of the cultural side, but the skills and traits required by companies. And by the way, I'll mention Transition only recruits in the commercial area. So we don't do academia or universities, just commercial area. So the skills and traits required are some of these, and I've highlighted some of the main ones. You know, people skills, you've got to be adaptable and solving problems. Generally, if you're doing a PhD or whatever, yes, you have those. You are flexible because one test didn't work and you have to do another one or adapt it, or it's problem solving. But the key one, and please take number one takeaway lesson today, it's becoming more and more apparent that commercial companies are moving towards project management. They'll get a group of, and go back to that chart I had a little while ago, quality assurance, quality control people, production, sales and marketing. Okay, this is what we need. This is how we do it. How do we move it forward in project management style? So as a hint, if you are looking to address and make sure you have project management skills, and consider doing a project management course after you finish uni. It seems to be the way it's going over the last 5 to 10 years. Obviously, you've got to have good time management, and because you're presenting all the time, one assumes you have very good presentation skills. The other one I'll stress, and I had some in-depth conversation with Crystal on this, is networking. You cannot miss the opportunity to get out and introduce yourself and talk about what is available and what's around. You have to have a pitch, you have to have something to ask, and that's the whole segment for another presentation sometime. But you have to network. You cannot just concentrate on doing what you're doing in academia. You have to look at the bigger picture, and I congratulate UQ Biotech Society through Christelle and April. Already I've seen that, okay, what do we need to do? How do we do it? And they're presenting this information to you, which is a great way. Okay, how do we take it further? Got to have commercial nous. Commercial nous is having a listen to these sort of presentations. Okay, what can I learn out of it? What can I take away from it? And then you have to establish, when you start going for jobs, some knowledge of the area and understand and make decisions. You have to be focused, well-planned, motivated, collaborative nature, and show initiative. You're all going to say, well, I'll do that now. Well, you know, show it to me when you start looking for jobs. And it's also valued, depending on where you are looking for a job, to have some overseas experience. I'm sure a lot of you will be heading off overseas, plus or minus COVID, and that's a good thing to have. Depending on the role, you have to have industry experience, awareness, and you see two words there, GMP and TGA. give you a hint. If you don't know what they are, go away and look at them up, because you should know all about it. And you've got to have awareness of companies and what they're doing. So the question I ask you, and please write it down for yourself, what are your strengths? We can't stop and give you time to do that, but you need to think, okay, what are my strengths in this area compared to this slide? Have I got all that? Which ones do I need to improve? Takeaway message for you. Next slide. The opportunities in industry. I'll just go through the numbers, and this is more about Queensland. It's a busy chart, but in essence, they're saying $1.66 billion in this area. Back a few years ago, there is about 11,000 people, probably about right. And I'll go down to a couple of things. Again, from COVID, you'd see expertise in e-health and telemedicine. Obviously, telemedicine through COVID's taken off. There are apps being made. There are people developing products in that area. You know, how can I get involved? Is that a trend that'll continue? You know, if you're into programming, how can I use e-health skills? How can I tap into it? And, you know, there is a lot of good state-of-the-art research facilities around. UQ, TRI, Griffith, all have very good research facilities, and it's something to be proud of and to be well marketed. I also mentioned down the bottom, and I noticed Crystal and April, UQ Biotech, one of your prime sponsors is Patheon or Thermo Fisher, who are one of those two leading biopharmaceutical contract manufacturers. By the way, I do a whole lot of work for the other mob, so I'll tell you about that in a while. This is a busy slide. Don't worry too much about it, but have a look in the middle. If I've got a career in an established company, once you've worked all that out, what are my options? What's the different way of looking at things? Well, if I'm in an established company, I could go to a startup who are looking for those skills. If I'm in an established company, be aware that there's a whole lot of companies that are offering products and services to us. Could I potentially work for one of those? Whether it's another company or another science section, diagnostic, it depends. So have a look when you're potentially in a role. Is there other companies doing the same? Is there startups? Is that where I want to position myself? If you look, as we look at the slide on the right-hand side, if you're in a career in an established company, who are supplying you with things like that you have buyers, you know, whether they're other biotech companies who are supplying you, big pharma maybe working in collaboration with you. Can I move over to them? By big pharma, I mean a big, large pharmaceutical company. No, it's not a farming organisation with cattle or sugarcane, just so we know the difference. And I know you do. It's a bit of a weak joke, but anyhow. But there are other market sectors as well that you may potentially move into, whether it's food, pathology, nutraceutical. And of course, there's the retail side of it. And I've mentioned with both Crystal and April that that's an area, for example, starting off a career as a GP rep for a large pharmaceutical company. So that's on the right-hand side. So again, I get back to the middle, the careers in an established company. Who are some of the suppliers that work with those companies? Well, it could be research institutes like the UQ or TRI. Do I want to go into that area? Do I want to work in a government department supplying or helping that company? Do I want to work for one of the equipment or consumable companies that we use, whether it's like a HPLC or an NMR? You know, who are the suppliers? Do I want to go into that area? Do I want to sell it, or do I want to offer tech support? And there's even, you know, working for recruiting companies. So that gives you an idea. It's just not a job in a company. Have a look at it. There's companies, other companies doing it. Could be a startup. There's suppliers to me, and there's buyers where maybe I can go to somewhere else as well. I know it's a busy slide, but hopefully that gives you an idea. Next one. So some of the positions that are available, and again, I stress they're just commercial roles. is research, and we're talking about information. We're not research so much in a laboratory, and it could be statistics, and I've got there projects, not drug. So it is the project management again. There's some scientists in manufacturing, whether it's in the process area, quality assurance, regulatory, or clinical, in the clinical trials area, or you may become an analyst looking at all the data. How can I use it? Certainly if you're doing information technology or informatics, that may be an area you go into. If you have a bent for being out there talking to people, love the interaction with people and customers, certainly business development or sales, or you can be like me, a consultant or a contractor to the whole business. So that gives you an idea of the positions that are available, but just bear in mind, you're just at the start, you're having a look. There's some of them, so thank you. I just want to point out, busy slide, but don't worry too much about it. If you look in the highlighted area, this was a graduate role. So it's a graduate role. Have a look at the numbers who applied, 231. In other words, if you're looking for a graduate role when you finish whatever you're doing, there is a lot of competition. So you need to work out how you can differentiate yourself from everybody else. And we'll touch on that in a little bit, but that's the key. There's a lot of people out there looking for graduate roles. How can I look better than the others or be better than the others? Then we move to, and again, if you look at the highlighted area, it's somebody who's been in the industry for 2 or 3 years, got a bit of experience. And again, there's 81 applicants. So if you're looking for a job in this area and you've got those skills, how can I make my skills look better than everybody else's? And it's just the way you do it. Why? Because so many people don't do it. I've mentioned that to Crystal in the past. Number of times I get job applications where I've put on the ad, apply to Trevor Neville at Tranzition Group. What do I get back? Dear sir or madam. You know, sorry people, I've got 81 people to look at. If you got a dear sir or madam, I'm not going to look at it. So the next one, next slide, please. Again, higher up the chain. So this is somebody with like 4 or 5 years experience. And this again is specifically what I talked about as a project manager. So this is where you've got those skills, you develop them. But again, a lot of people haven't done that once they leave academia. So how do I get a role like this? And you can see the number of applicants is a lot less than the other 2 roles. Again, the more experienced you are, the less people go for jobs. But when you start off down the bottom, there are a lot of people doing it for you. Hopefully this is making sense. Next slide. So in doing that, I talked to Crystal and April about it. At this stage, or when you finish, you need to sort out, okay, what are my skills and what are my strengths, and also what are my core values? What sort of company do I want to work for? Are they collaborative? Do they believe in gender equality? Is there a career path? If they're all questions that you're looking to answer for yourself, you need to apply for positions with those sort of companies. So Transition has developed an online course called Transition to Transition, where most people, dare I say at a younger age, you haven't established what your core values are. Is it around honesty, integrity, sense of family, a sense of purpose? What are your core values? You need to find those out and then mimic that in organisations that you want to apply for. Why? Because you'll have synergy straight away. You're talking to the right people, they understand it. And in doing so, because that's where you are, you're very enthusiastic, passionate, and it shows out when you get to the interviews. So just as I say, as a mention, beyond all that, we run this course. Then separately, if you're looking down the track, we do offer one-on-one when you are looking for a job, not necessarily with Transition that are running the job, but it may be with another company, and want to differentiate yourself from the other 231 applicants. How do I do that? Short answer is it's very much about your covering letter and your CV. And as I've found with Crystal and April, it's all about networking and understand who these people are. For example, I know UQ Biotech, you run industry nights with people like Illum, Patheon, etc. You need to make contact with those type of people, and there's a way of doing that as well. So hopefully that gives you some idea of what it's all about. And I know I'm probably running just a few minutes early, which is a nice change. But we will have questions as well on any of those. And feel free, I'll pass over to Crystal and April at this stage, and we'll see what we get.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Thank you for sharing that information with us. I found that really insightful, and I really believe that this is something that's really important that I think students should understand, and that they should understand well before they graduate, because some of the skills that you mentioned are the kinds of skills that you might need to spend some time developing and some time working on. So really, if you guys are in your undergrad or you've just started your master's, you're really in a great position to take on board the information that Trevor shared with us today and reflect and have a think about what kind of skills or traits you think you might need in the future. And that really comes down to the type of employment and what kind of company you want to work for and what do they look for in a potential graduate and a potential employee. It makes me think it's really interesting because just from my own personal experience, some of the people I've chatted to in industry. So a manager of one of the large biotech companies in Brisbane, I overheard say at a presentation once that they don't actually look for or care what grades you get at university, which I think is something that might be a bit of a shock to everyone. I know it certainly was to me, because that's a very different perspective to what we usually find out from our lecturers, say, or from expectations we get from our lecturers or our teachers, our tutors, about the sort of expectations and sort of the level of academic achievement you're supposed to achieve. And one of the things I've really gotten from what Trevor shared with us today is that there's all these other skills and traits that you can develop throughout your university studies. It's not all just about the academia and the grades that you're getting. And I spoke to someone else who used to work for a part of the School of Chemistry and Molecular Biosciences that helps science students develop their employability skills. And I asked her, what's the number one thing that students don't understand or don't know that they should know, that they need to know about how to get a job when they graduate? And she also said the number one thing is these soft skills that Trevor's talked about, your ability to time manage, to problem solve, how well do you communicate? Do you work well in a team? Those sorts of skills are really, really valuable to employers, as Trevor's pointed out. And if you also look, Trevor, when he started, he talked about the cultural differences between research and entrepreneurship, or also business. When you look at those, the goals or the requirements from business, and you compare that to the skills and traits that Trevor talked about, it really comes to light. You really understand why. So there's a connection between needing to be able to, have project management skills, and that's needed because of the dynamic environment that businesses operate in. You need to be able to adapt to change quite quickly in business compared to, say, research. Thank you very much, Trevor. I really resonate with what you had to say today, and I really hope that everyone in the audience has gotten something really valuable out of this. I wanted to kick off our Q&A session by just asking you a question, Trevor. So you've shown us that biotechnology employers look for particular skills and traits, which we've talked about. Do you have any examples of how graduates, particularly those who went on to gain successful employment, how they were able to demonstrate these particular skills and qualities, particularly when they don't have any industry experience?
Yeah, good question, Crystal. And I probably hear that question once a week from people like yourself or others. The short answer is, if you're applying for a position, let's take that scenario. You're applying for a position. Number one, read the ad. or if they send a position description. Generally in the advert these days, they say, this is what we're looking for: collaborative, team worker, whatever. Then you have a look at, what have I done over the last 3 years of study, 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is, that aligns with that? Where have I been collaborative? Where can I show an example where I've worked with that group over there, that group there, and together we designed or we produced this report, which was fantastic. And that's as an example, project management. You've probably all done it, to be honest, but you don't know you've done it. So, you know, you're starting off a research project. How do you plan it out? Is it done? Well, when we get to this outcome, we'll go to phase 2. Yeah, but do you need to have that outcome within 2 weeks, 5 weeks? What are the resources required to make this work? Who else do I have to ask to make this? So that way you build out what the total project with the outcome in mind is about. So you've probably got a lot of those skills, but you need to target it with what's written initially in the advert or on the position description. If you are, again, networking and just talking to people, well, number one, I'll be very honest, you got to know who you're talking to. You just don't roll up and say, who are you and what do you do? You have to know, well, that's so-and-so from that company. Okay, I know a little bit about them, and then ask them a question. And one that really gets me, which I think is so applicable to you people, is, so tell me about your corporate values and vision. And if companies can't enunciate that to you, that tells you something. The only rough rule of thumb, the only successful company are those that have good company vision and values. If they don't have that, they don't make it. They'll fall over. If you have a CEO who says one thing and does another thing, at the end of the day, it won't work. The company will fold. So you are in a very good position to say, okay, if I'm going to have a job and I'm going to have a successful career, I know what my values are about. I need to talk to companies that have that and then go looking for them. And that's the key. And I know, speaking to Crystal separately, she does that very well. And that's the key. I'll give you a story way back when I was chair of Oz Biotech. And there's a cohort of students coming through, just finishing, and they were looking for jobs. And they were coming to the breakfasts that we were running, etc. But the one who got ahead more than anyone else, and here's a hint for you, here's a tip. Every time she went to a networking event, and when they took Q&A, they would ask a question. They'd stand up and say, hi, I'm Crystal Davey from UQ Biotechnology Society. I'd like to ask this question about such and such. Now, what does that do? One, it gets you in front of all the people in that room. Is it scary? Absolutely. I only did it last week and I still don't like it, but it's got to be done because there was a lot of people in the room I was in and I needed to get the message across. So that's the key, is to understand this is what I'm about, this is what I want to do. And this girl, going back to those breakfasts, she'd ask a question every time. And now that person's gone on to a very, very good career and currently CEO of a company somewhere. I'm talking, 10, 15 years ago. So ask the question is a key, but ask a good question. Why? Because you know what your values are, you know what the company's values are, and they'll want to answer it because, oh, here's somebody I want to know about.
Thanks very much for that, Trevor. And if I can just add to that, I guess I just want to encourage all the students out there to really realize that, you learn by doing. You don't have to have all these skills already to be able to get out there and just give them a go. It is scary. at first, but just have confidence in yourself, and be genuinely curious and genuinely interested in the companies and the people that you might have the chance to chat to, and just, you know, help your interaction or make your interaction stem from that, from a genuine curiosity. This is who I am. I'm really interested in biotech. This is why I want to go into it. I'm really interested in your company or in you for XYZ, and ask them questions about themselves. And I found from personal experience that you really get a really good response from that. So yeah, go out there and give it a go, talk to people, and you'll start seeing the value in that. April, I understand you've got a question prepared for us.
Yes. So my questions is a bit more specific because I myself is an international student. So I want to ask something about international student side of question. So I want to ask, how is the employability for international students in biotechnology sector, since international students, are a special group in Australia? I believe there must be more than a few international students in our audience right now. And as an international students, they normally don't have permanent resident visa or citizenship. And how will that affect the employability of us? And what should they mention about the permanent resident visa or citizenship situation in the interview? Should they mention that they don't have it and they are going to pursue it? In which way will be more suitable for an employer to think, yes, this is the right person I'm looking for? And yes.
Good question, April, and very succinct. The short answer is, say you're on a 457 visa or whatever. I recommend when you're applying for a job, on your covering letter and CV, you have that you are up the top in bold. You're on a 457 and when it expires, as an example. So therefore, everybody knows straight away. And then if you are considering going to Australian permanent residency, mention that as well. But you need to be upfront, because people, doesn't happen with me, because I now always ask the question of, are you on a 457 visa? Have you got a student visa? How long does it last for? Are you on a partner's visa or whatever, spouses? Because that's critical to know, depending on the role. It's critical for the company and for your own honesty to say, well, this is where I'm up to. If they don't want to interview you, well, you wouldn't have got the job anyhow, so it doesn't matter from that viewpoint. And please take it in the right light. It's a bit of trivia for you. I don't know if you ever remember the one of Alice in Wonderland sitting in the tree, and she's coming to a fork in the road, and she turns to the tiger next to her. Alice in Wonderland says, "Tiger, I've come to a fork in the road," and put in brackets, "my career. Which way should I go?" And the tiger says, "Well, what do you want to do with your career?" And she replies, "I don't know." And the tiger says, "Well, it doesn't matter which way you go." So what I'm trying to say is, the more targeted, the more you understand where you want to go. That is, I'll turn left or I'll turn right, the better chance you have. But you have to be upfront, certainly with the honesty, as far as whether you've got a permanent residency or a 457, as specifically when it expires. Generally, depending on the role, a graduate role, they might be okay with it for 18 months if you're considering staying here or applying for PR.
Yeah.
Otherwise, don't bother.
Just a little bit more supplement question. So if I want to be upfront, which way do you think I should include this information that I say about my visa information and like I will apply for my work visa for 3 years soon. Should I include it in my cover letter or?
Yeah, in your covering letter and the top of your CV. These days, for those, and this is a quick one, your CV is generally your name, first name, last name, your best contact number, your LinkedIn profile these days. Then the next one is, April, if you're in that position, student visa expiring April 2023, applying for PR during that time.
Okay.
Have it up front so people know, then cover yourself by having it in the covering letter as well. You might have it in that case under the, write down under your signature, PS, student 457 expiring on such and such a date, applying for PR. Does that answer that, April?
Yes, that's very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor.
No
Okay.
worries.
I think we have to give our more opportunities to our audience right now. So any of you, if you want to ask questions in person, you can unmute yourself or even turn on your video to ask Trevor anything you want. And also we have 2 questions in the chat already. If Trevor can look through it.
Yeah, okay. The first one is, what sort of circumstances do companies offer visa sponsorship? Answer, very limited. And it gets down to the company policy. Generally, rough rule of thumb, if you're a senior person with experience, they may consider visa because of your set of skills and experience that you've had to that date. Generally, at a graduate level, no, it doesn't happen unless you have some unique skills that nobody else does. There's a few reasons. Not so much the cost of it, and I know graduates have said, look, I'll pay for it. It's more about just the paperwork involved. Companies are very busy and they really need to focus on the job, and helping somebody with a sponsorship just takes up time because generally they don't have people who do that. It's not like UQ where I know there's a whole career centre offering various services. Most companies don't have that. So, and generally as a graduate, very little chance of being offered visa sponsorship. I get a lot of people from overseas applying for roles, and if the company policy as well is, no, we're not doing visa sponsorship, I don't even put them forward. And only occasionally, and I'll stress at the more senior level, will I put somebody forward and I say, look, we need to look at this person because they've got some unique skills that we can't seem to find in Australia. And yes, we have taken those people on board and taken them through the visa sponsorship route. But that takes some time, but it's generally, I'll stress again, at a very high senior management level. Does that answer that question? I hope, Philly, it does.
Yes.
And then there was
Shannon.
Yeah, can you explain about project-based research? Oh, okay. And Crystal and April, please feel free to jump in. Generally, you're doing a research project, whatever's been given to you by a supervisor and that, and you need to look at X, Y, and Z. But to do that, a lot of the times, and please jump in, they'll either say, this is how you do it, this is what you've got to do, or they say to you, okay, that's what we need to do. You go away, research what we need to do, and come back with a plan of how we do it, what we need, etc. Can I just stop there and say, how does it normally work, Crystal, April? Like that or not?
Yeah, I think it depends on the level of research, whether you're doing an undergrad research project, honours, or a PhD. But generally, your supervisor and their group already does a particular field of research and already has an interesting research question, and then it's your job to then pursue that, and often with a lot of guidance from your supervisor.
Right. So they need to build out a project based on doing that research?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, so that's where the project-based skills. As I said to most of you, you're doing it already. You just need to think of it as a project. Okay, you know, who the 5 W's and a H, who's doing it? How are they doing it? Why are they doing it? Where does it need to be done? Where does it need to happen? When does it have to happen by? What do I need to do to get all that right to make a good project? Who do I need to incorporate in it to make it worthwhile? So you're doing it, you just need to look at it slightly different. Does that help?
Yes.
Can I add to that question as well, Trevor? In a company, does it involve a lot more collaboration generally with lots of different departments within a company?
Absolutely.
So instead of having your own research project that you kind of have total control over, you're working very collaborative in a team towards a project goal, a research goal?
Good question, Crystal. And the short answer is yes, absolutely. It is going back to that chart initially across from research to commercialization. You're dealing with quality assurance, you're dealing with manufacturing, dealing with quality control, maybe regulatory, sales and marketing will have some input because they may need X amounts of whatever it is. So everyone is involved, and you need to be aware of what they do, which obviously comes with experience, but being involved in a project gives you a rapid increase in knowledge of other areas as well, which, by the way, could open up another avenue you might want to explore down the track as well. Does that answer that, Crystal?
And yeah, it does, Trevor, certainly. And then just because I thought of something else as you're speaking, when you compare research to industry research projects, in terms of the kind of, being able to handle or deal with having your project fail or having your experiments fail. So I know that happens a lot in research, but in industry, that can also happen. Your experiments can fail or your project can be unsuccessful. And it can happen quite rapidly because, you might have been involved in the research and development of a new drug from the beginning, but then have it fail at the preclinical stage. And you have to be able to deal with having spent the last 2-3 years working on a project that all of a sudden your management say, that's failed, that's no longer presents a profitable opportunity for us. We now need you to drop that and switch over to this new project. So being able to handle, committing to a project and then having to drop it and then very quickly, very rapidly adapt to the change of reorientating to a new project. Is that something that you face in industry as well?
Indeed, Crystal. Too many times. It happens all the time. But if I can add to that scenario, fail quick, fail fast. Companies, if something's going to work, we'll run with it. But if it's not going to work, we want to know about it pretty quickly and don't hide it. Again, getting back to your personal core values, etc., is part of my core values, honesty and integrity. If it is, you'll say, look, we've done this, this, and this. This is the result. And if that's what you as management say, because it has failed, as you say, preclinical, you can't do much about it. Yes, you're right, Crystal. Okay, what's the next one? What do we need to do? How can we get back on board the train, so to speak?
Yeah, for sure. No, thanks, Trevor. We do have another question. Hashida Rupani asks, what can we do to get our resume through the screening software that companies usually use for screening candidates? And also, do we include our photo on our resume?
In Australia, do not include a photo, number one. It is big generally in Southeast Asia. And I can always bet when I get candidates from Singapore, everyone's got a photo on it, which is nice. It's good. But these days, just by the by, we can look up LinkedIn and find that if we need to know. So no, don't have photos. And sorry, what was the other part of the question?
How do we get through our resume through the screening software that companies use?
Yeah. The key to that is read the advert and or position description. What I would be doing if there is an advert, I'd be ringing up the company, finding out the position description. Why is that? Because most people don't do it. They take the ad as the only source of information. Guess who's showing initiative trying to find the position description and making. So that's number one. Again, if you really do align your covering letter and your CV with what they ask for in the advert, you should do far better than the vast majority of people who don't do that. Getting back to my example where I always put on my adverts, please apply to Trevor Neville, Transition Group, blah, blah, blah. And if I see a covering letter come in with dear sir or madam, so what does that tell me about your attention to detail? You know, sorry, if there's 231 applicants, dear sir or madam doesn't cut it. The whole idea of applicants for a job is to take all those ones, and if I've got software, I want to get to an inbox of whether it's 5 or 10, so that we can look at further. You need to be out of that pile in that pile. To do that, you have to align, whether it's with the software or with what the company ad says. If you can't align, my question to you is, why are you applying for that position? You have to apply for what you can do. And again, that gets back to sorting out, and you're at the right stage of your career growth. What do I want to do? How do I do it? Where do I go to find that information? Again, if I go back to Crystal, she certainly, as an example, doing that, as a lot of other people have in the past as well. Those that do that stand a far, far better chance, I can guarantee you.
And Trevor, we have a question from Shannon, a follow-on question. Would you recommend doing a PhD if one is not interested in doing academic research postdoc?
No.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it was a bit blunt. Senior research roles in industry, yes, they have to have a PhD. It's generally in that area of expertise that company has. That's why they want somebody with a PhD. I see in this day and age so many people doing a PhD who, and rightfully so, they've studied a lot longer, spent a lot more money, and they have an expectation too of perhaps being better than somebody with a basic science qualification. That may or may not be true. But B, what, from employers' viewpoint, what are you really showing me? Apart from the fact you've done more research, you have identified all the things that we've talked about today, you may have done a bit more. My question to you is, if you're getting into the business area, right, depending on what role, I would now do project management or start thinking seriously about an MBA. If you're getting into the business or sales side, you're going to get into quality assurance, or that there are a lot of courses they run, and I recommend if anyone knows of Life Sciences Queensland, have a look on their website. Last year we ran a whole lot of careers webinars for them, and there's an excellent talk on clinical trials which you might be able to get hold of. If you're going into that area, in one video you can find out everything you need to know. But you need to do what April and Crystal are doing. Get out there, listen, ask questions, and that way, the more information you get, the more informed you are, the better you are positioned. So that's a long-winded answer to the PhD of no.
Thanks very much, Trevor. That pretty much wraps up the time that we have for today. I wanted to thank you very much, Trevor, for joining us and for sharing your knowledge and your insight with us all. I know it's hugely valuable to each and every one of us in the audience today. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time. And also thank you everyone in the audience for attending today, for joining us, and for asking your questions and engaging so much in this session. I really hope you got a lot out of it.
I did. I learned a lot.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, April, for organising. Thank you to everyone who's listened in and had a look. Remember the take-home message. Don't think I've just wasted an hour. If you have, you're probably not in the right area. But what is it I need to do now to get myself ready? So thank you, Crystal, April.
Thanks very much, Trevor.
Trevor.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye now.